Viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. What you are about to hear is not fiction. It's the raw, unfiltered truth from the heart of a trial that's shaking the foundations of the music industry. This is the testimony that could change everything. On the seventh day of the Sean Diddy Combs trial, a hush fell over the courtroom. All eyes turned as Sheila E, the legendary percussionist, stepped forward. But she wasn't just there for herself. She carried the weight of a secret, a warning from a man who many believe knew too much. Years before his untimely death, Prince confided in Sheila. He spoke of a darkness lurking beneath the glitz and glamour of the music industry, a darkness he feared would silence him. Prince told me, "This industry isn't about the music anymore. It's about control. They don't want your songs. They want your soul." The air in courtroom 3B hung heavy, thick with the unset sunlight, filtered through the tall, arched windows, cast long, dusty streaks across the polished wood of the jury box and the hushed gallery. Every creak of a chair, every rustle of a paper, seemed amplified in the federal chamber, a stark contrast to the usual cacophony of downtown New York. For 6 days, the trial of Sean Diddy Combs had been a relentless barrage of legal maneuvering, digital evidence, and the chilling testimony of alleged victims. But today, Day 7 felt different. A tremor of anticipation, a low hum of whispers had taken hold, sparked by the morning's docket. Across the room, the defense team, led by the formidable Marcus Thorne, sat with an almost unnerving calm. Thorne, a man whose tailored suits seemed to absorb light, possessed a courtroom presence forged in 100 battles. His co-counsel, Sarah Chen, young but sharp-eyed, meticulously organized her notes, her brow furrowed in concentration. Their client, Sean Combs, sat between them, a figure once synonymous with swagger and untouchable cool, now appearing as if carved from stone. His gaze was fixed on the witness stand, an unreadable mask of composure, yet a flicker in his eyes, a slight tightening around his jaw, hinted at a deeper current beneath the surface. The prosecution table buzzed with a controlled energy. Lead prosecutor, Anya Sharma, a woman with a reputation for both meticulous preparation and a deceptively gentle demeanor, conferred quietly with her team. She had built her career on bringing the powerful to account, and today she held a card few had anticipated. Junior prosecutor, David Miller, a former musician himself, kept glancing at the courtroom doors, a nervous excitement radiating from him. He knew the weight of what was about to unfold. Judge Eleanor Subramanian, a woman whose stern countenance belied a sharp legal mind, entered the courtroom. The room rose in unison, a ripple of deference. Her voice, when she spoke, was clear and resonant. "Be seated. All rise for the witness." The doors at the side of the courtroom swung open. A collective intake of breath swept through the gallery. Even the typically stoic reporters leaned forward, their pens poised. And then she walked in. Sheila E, her name, a whisper on a million lips, known to the world as Prince's legendary percussionist, his muse, his confidant. Few had expected her to be called. Her iconic status, her almost mythical connection to the late, enigmatic artist, made her presence here feel less like legal procedure and more like a pivotal scene in a grand, unfolding drama. She moved with a quiet dignity, her vibrant spirit toned down for the somber setting, yet an undeniable aura of strength radiated from her. She wore a simple, elegant black suit, her hair pulled back, revealing eyes that seemed to hold both immense sadness and unwavering purpose. As she approached the stand, she paused, her gaze sweeping the room. It lingered for a moment on the jury, then on Sean Combs, a flicker of something unidentifiable in her expression. She then turned her focus to the judge, her resolve hardening. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?" the clerk asked. "I do." Sheila E's voice was clear, unwavering, cutting through the hushed courtroom like a perfectly struck cymbal. She settled into the witness chair, her hands clasped loosely in her lap. The very air seemed to thicken, charged with the weight of her presence. This wasn't just another witness. She was a living echo of a legend, carrying a final warning, a desperate plea from a man many believed had known too much, a man silenced too soon. Anya Sharma approached the witness stand, her movements graceful and deliberate, Ms. Escovedo, thank you for being here today. We appreciate your courage. Sheila E. nodded, her gaze steady. I'm here because I promised a friend. And that friend was Prince Rogers Nelson, Sharma asked, her voice soft, guiding. Yes, my brother, my mentor, my confidant. Sheila E.'s voice held a warmth that belied the sterile courtroom setting. Sharma moved to the heart of it. Ms. Escovedo, you testified in camera about conversations you had with Prince prior to his passing, and can you share with the jury the nature of those conversations, particularly concerning his fears? Sheila E. took a slow, deep breath, as if steeling herself. Prince was unsettled, increasingly so in his final year. It wasn't just the music industry's changes he was worried about. It was something far darker. He told me there was more going on than anyone knew. It wasn't just about owning your masters, it was about who owns you. A murmur went through the gallery. Reporters scribbled furious. Combs remained impassive, but Sarah Chen exchanged a quick glance with Marcus Thorne. Sheila E. continued, her voice gaining strength, each word deliberate, weighted with memory. He felt the industry had become a breeding ground for manipulation, for exploitation, for coercion. He said it was like a gilded cage, trapping artists, and the bars weren't just financial, they were psychological. He believed there were people at the top playing God, and he believed they were dangerous. Did he specify who these people at the top were? Sharma prompted gently. He mentioned several names over the years. Sheila E. replied, her eyes distant, lost in the past. But one name kept coming up, repeatedly. Sean Diddy Combs. The courtroom fell silent again. Every eye was on Sheila E. Combs's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. What did Prince say about Mr. Combs? Sharma asked, her voice low. He believed Diddy was involved in deals that went far beyond music. He said Diddy was protected by powerful institutions, by a network that extended far beyond the studio. Prince didn't say it out of jealousy. Sheila clarified, anticipating the defense's likely line of attack. He said it because he had seen it firsthand. He saw the strings being pulled. She recounted a specific late-night phone call, the kind Prince often initiated when his thoughts became too heavy to bear alone. He called me past midnight. His voice, it was different, not just tired but haunted. He said, if I speak too loud, they'll shut me down. He sounded like a man who knew he was being watched, a man who felt a target on his back, not for his art, but for his knowledge. The image of Prince, the fearless innovator, reduced to a paranoid whisper, painted a chilling picture. Sheila E. continued, describing how Prince warned her never to go to certain industry parties, specifically, ones where Diddy would be in attendance. He said, you don't want to be in that room. Things happen there that you can't unsee. He didn't call them parties, really. He called them rituals, celebrations, masked as something else entirely. She remembered scoffing at first, dismissing it as Prince's typical artistic hyperbole. I thought he was exaggerating. Prince had a flair for the dramatic, you know? But then he came back from a trip to Los Angeles, and he wasn't exaggerating. He was visibly shaken. He didn't eat, he didn't sleep, he just kept repeating, they know, I know. The courtroom hung on her every word. The jury, a diverse group of individuals, some looking skeptical, others deeply troubled, absorbed the narrative. The emotional weight of her testimony was undeniable. Ms. Escovedo, Sharma continued, her voice empathetic. Can you tell us about a specific event related to Mr. Combs and Prince? Sheila E. nodded, a shadow crossing her face. The first Diddy party I ever saw was at Prince's house, and Prince wasn't happy about it. Not happy at all. She recounted the story from approximate. Diddy, through mutual industry associates, had requested to throw an exclusive event at Paisley Park. Prince, typically fiercely protective of his sanctuary, initially refused. But the pressure, Sheila said, was immense. It wasn't a request, it was an expectation. Prince felt cornered. He reluctantly agreed, believing it would be a professional gathering, a networking event, maybe a press reception. But it wasn't. Sharma pressed. No. Sheila E. exhaled slowly. It was supposed to be professional, but what unfolded was something Prince never wanted to be associated with. Never. She described the initial facade, the red carpet, the champagne flutes clinking, the flash of cameras, the arrival of famous guests. It began like any other high-profile industry event, but once the cameras stopped flashing, Sheila E. stated, her voice dropping, things changed. Security staff, Diddy's people, told me no one was allowed to bring in their phones or their personal security, not even Prince's trusted Paisley Park team. That's when Prince told me, "This isn't my party anymore." His voice was flat, resigned. Inside, the energy shifted palpably. The atmosphere, Sheila E described, her brow furrowing in distaste. It became decadent, behavior I had never seen at Paisley Park, ever. Suggestive performances, open distribution of controlled substances, an eerie absence of boundary. It was like a different world had been imported into his sacred space. And then she spoke of the private section, a part of the estate, cordoned off, accessible only to a select few. Only a handful were allowed in, she recalled. Prince looked at me, his face pale, and he said, "That's where the real party is." Sheila E didn't go beyond that door. She respected Prince's silent warning. The next morning, the aftermath was clear. Prince told me, "That was the last time I let him into my home." Something dark came in with him. She paused, her eyes welling slightly. He said he felt violated, that his home, his haven, had been desecrated. "Did you believe Prince regretted allowing Diddy access to his world?" Sharma asked, her voice hushed. "Absolutely," Sheila affirmed, her voice resolute. He felt like he'd opened a door that couldn't be closed, and after that night, everything changed. His paranoia intensified, his guard went up. He saw the industry through a different, much darker lens. The jury watched, some nodding slowly, others with troubled expressions. The image of Prince, the fiercely independent artist, being forced to host such an event, and the subsequent feeling of violation, resonated deeply. The system of silence, control beyond music. As her testimony continued, Sheila E began to weave a more complex narrative, one that stunned the courtroom with its implications. Prince believed that control in the music industry wasn't just financial, it was psychological. It was about owning minds, not just masters. He told me, "They don't just want your hits, they want your silence, and if they can't buy it, they'll bury you." He spoke of NDAs, backroom deals, secret meetings, where careers were made or destroyed overnight. He called it the system of silence. She connected this chilling belief to the whispers she'd heard about Diddy's alleged freak-off parties. Prince believed those gatherings weren't just about pleasure, they were about power. He said, "They film everything, that's how they get you, that's how they hold you hostage." According to Sheila, Prince described it as a sophisticated system. People are groomed, lured into these situations, then they're filmed, compromising footage. And once they're caught, they're blackmailed. If you don't comply, if you try to speak out, you vanish. From the chart, from the industry, from existence. Sometimes, she also noted a crucial shift in Prince's focus. Around this time, he had started a full-scale legal and spiritual war against Warner Bros., the same company that was tied to both his infamous contract disputes, and significantly, Diddy's record label deal. Prince saw it as all connected. He told me, "The same executives that shortchanged me, that tried to own my name, they're the ones helping launch Diddy. They fund the machine." He believed Diddy was allowed to rise because he played the game, while Prince was punished for trying to own his own music, for trying to speak out, for trying to break free. The courtroom was silent, save for the hum of the ventilation system. The gravity of her statements was immense, suggesting a conspiracy far wider than just one individual. Sheila E then described one of Prince's final desperate statements to her, a premonition that chilled her to the bone. He said, "When I go, don't let it be in vain. Remember what I told you. Protect the truth, even if it's ugly." She looked directly at the jury, her gaze pleading. "He confided in me about an entire network within the music industry, one built around surveillance. He said they record everything. And I mean everything." She testified that Prince believed many of the elite parties he was once invited to were in fact traps. He said people were led into rooms, offered substances, then caught on camera, never knowing the footage would one day be used as leverage, to secure loyalty, to enforce silence. And did he ever mention Mr. Combs, in relation to this surveillance system? Sharma pressed, her voice low. "Yes," Sheila E confirmed. "He said Diddy was one of the gatekeepers." He referenced multiple conversations, where Prince described Diddy as someone who had crossed a line. He no longer operated as an artist, Prince said. He was an enforcer. He wasn't just participating, he was curating, controlling. Prince, she explained, had grown increasingly disturbed by stories he'd heard from artists who had escaped what he called the bad boy ecosystem. He would recount how they would vanish,
spiral, or disappear from the charts overnight. He believed some had been blackballed after refusing to engage in certain activities, or after trying to expose what really happened at these parties. But what truly unnerved Prince, according to Sheila, was the pervasive idea that this footage existed, and was being stored or traded. He said, "This isn't just dirt, this is currency. They own you with it." He had started looking into who had access to these tapes. He feared what might happen if he ever appeared in one, even if he was merely in the background. That fear, Sheila E. concluded, her voice barely a whisper, haunted him until the day he died.
The courtroom shifted, a collective tightening of spines as Sheila E. recounted her last conversation with Prince. It was not just strange, it was alarming. It was just days before his death, she began, her voice tightening with remembered grief. He called me unexpectedly, in the middle of the night. I remember looking at the time. It was past 2 a.m. He never called that late, never. Her voice cracked slightly, the raw emotion piercing the formality of the court. He sounded scared, not afraid of death. No, Prince wasn't afraid of dying, but that night he sounded afraid of people, of what they could do. Sheila E. testified that Prince spoke cryptically, but his message was chillingly clear. He said, "They're watching me. They want me quiet." She didn't have to ask who they were. I already knew. It was the system, the industry, the gatekeepers he always warned me about. Then came the revelation that jolted the entire courtroom. He told me he was going to speak out. He said there were plans. He'd already been talking to people about testifying in a federal case. A ripple went through the gallery. Sean Combs's mask seemed to crack, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Sharma's voice was firm, pressing for clarity. Did Prince say he would be testifying in a federal case, Ms. Escovedo? Sheila E. nodded, her gaze resolute. Yes. And when I asked what about, he said, "These parties, these artists. The tapes. They're not rumors. I've seen them." Her voice broke slightly with the weight of memory. He seemed especially disturbed by the involvement of men he once considered allies. He told me he went to a gathering and realized half the people in the room were there to collect secrets, not share music. Then the quote that left the courtroom utterly silent. He said, "If I go down, it'll be because I tried to save someone who didn't want saving." Paused, her eyes distant, as if reliving the moment. At the time, she whispered, "I thought he was talking about an artist, someone he was trying to pull from the darkness. But now, seeing all this, I think he was talking about Diddy." The collective gasp from the gallery was almost audible. The legal teams remained stone-faced, but the jurors scribbled furiously. She recalled Prince's final words on that fateful call. "Don't let them twist my legacy. And if something happens, remember this call. Say it loud if I can't." The next morning Sheila tried calling him back. No answer. A few days later the news broke. He was gone. "I didn't want to believe it," Sheila E. confessed, her voice thick with emotion. "But now that I've seen what's come out about the abuse, the parties, the coercion, I think Prince was trying to warn the world, and they cut him off before he could." A lone tear tracked a path down her cheek. Sheila E.'s testimony continued into one of the most explosive sections of the day. Anya Sharma, with surgical precision, began to draw direct lines between Prince's chilling suspicions and the federal charges now facing Sean "Diddy" Combs. "Escovedo," Sharma began, her voice clear and cutting through the emotional haze left by Sheila's previous statements. "Do you believe Prince's warnings about surveillance, manipulation, and coercion are reflected in the current case, particularly in the testimony of Miss Cassie Ventura?" Sheila didn't hesitate. Her grief-stricken vulnerability had been replaced by a quiet, fierce conviction. "Every single detail Cassie shared in this trial, Prince told me was happening years ago." Her voice rose, filled with the raw force of a truth long suppressed. "He told me artists were being filmed without consent, that these parties were fronts not just for drugs and power but for blackmail, that NDAs weren't protecting victims, they were silencing them. They were weapons." The jury listened intently, their pens flying across notepad. Sheila described a specific conversation where Prince reportedly referred to Diddy not as a producer or a peer, but as a handler. She explained, "He said Diddy knew everyone's weakness and knew how to use it. He didn't just want to control music. He wanted to control people. He collected vulnerabilities. He capitalized on fear." Prince,
she alleged, feared the same fate would befall other artists who crossed him, who tried to break free from the system. And that's when Sheila brought up the coincidental collapses of several bad boy artists' careers, names that once dominated the charts. He told me about Mace, about Total, about Day 26. He said it wasn't just mismanagement, it was punishment. It was a message. See what happens when you don't comply. Then she told the court about the unholy alliance Prince described, the deal between Warner Brothers and Bad Boy, a partnership Prince reportedly said tied two devils together. He hated Warner for how they treated him, for how they tried to own his name. But when he found out they were bankrolling Diddy, he said it made sense. Of course they are, he said. They fund the machine. I escaped, but others never will. The implication was staggering. A powerful record label actively enabling, even financing, a system of control and alleged blackmail. Prosecutors asked the inevitable question, why hadn't Prince gone public with any of this sooner? Sheila's voice cracked slightly, heavy with regret. He was waiting. He said he wanted to release the story with evidence, dates, names, contracts. He was meticulous. He had his own investigative team gathering information. But the week before he was supposed to meet with them, and just like that, the silence of nearly a decade, the whispers of conspiracy surrounding Prince's death, seemed to click into place in a whole new terrifying way. The courtroom felt a collective shiver. Sheila ended her testimony with a final poignant quote from Prince. What they do in the dark comes out in the music. Listen closely. You'll hear the pain. She turned to the jury, her eyes direct, unwavering. Now you're hearing it in court. The courtroom lights seemed to grow harsher, casting long, stark shadows as Marcus Thorne, Diddy's lead attorney, rose for cross-examination. A seasoned litigator known for his ruthless efficiency and his ability to dismantle celebrity witnesses, Thorne exuded an almost predatory confidence. Until now, Sheila E's testimony had unfolded under the steady, almost compassionate guidance of prosecutors, methodical and reverent toward Prince's memory. The defense chose a different tactic: attack credibility, question motives, muddy timelines, and sow seeds of doubt. Thorne began by leaning into the 5-year period when Sheila and Prince reportedly had no contact. He cited carefully selected magazine interviews where each had claimed the other had moved on. Ms. Escovedo, Thorne's voice was a low, resonant rumble, cutting through the emotional atmosphere. Isn't it true that you and Prince had been estranged for nearly half a decade prior to his passing? That you published a memoir he reportedly felt betrayed his privacy, causing a significant rift? Sheila E's composure, though strained, held firm. We disagreed over the book's tone, she admitted, her voice steady, but we reconnected. Our bond was deeper than any disagreement. He reached out to me. We rebuilt our friendship. Thorne scoffed subtly, a barely perceptible twitch of his lip. And when precisely did this miraculous reconnection occur, Ms. Escovedo? In late 2015 into early 2016, she answered, her gaze unwavering. And I have phone logs, flight manifests, handwritten notes from him, dated January through April. Before Thorne could press further, Anya Sharma was on her feet. Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is attempting to mischaracterize the witness's relationship with the deceased. The witness has documentation to support her claim. Sustained. Judge Subramanian interjected, her voice sharp. Ms. Sharma, present your evidence. Prosecutors moved swiftly, submitting binders of phone records showing frequent calls between Sheila E and Prince in the months leading up to his death, flight manifests detailing her visits to Paisley Park, and scanned images of handwritten notes from Prince to Sheila, filled with personal details and affectionate salutations. The evidence was compelling, forcing Thorne to pivot. Next came the thinly veiled insinuations of financial motive. Thorne noted that Prince's estate was still being litigated, a complex, multi-million-dollar affair. Ms. Escovedo, he asked, his voice dripping with insinuation, is it not true that you stand to gain financially from this testimony? Are you perhaps hoping to strengthen your position as a potential beneficiary by inserting yourself into a high-profile trial involving an estate of this magnitude? The implication drew murmurs from the gallery, a wave of discomfort rippling through the courtroom. Sheila paused, her eyes scanning the jurors, making direct eye contact with several of them. Her response was delivered with quiet power. Prince and I resolved our creative and personal disputes in 2015. Our relationship was based on mutual respect and love. not money. She took a deep breath. He asked me to protect the truth, Mr. Thorne, not chase dollars. My testimony here today risks my touring revenue, my relationships within this very industry. I am here because he asked me to be. I am here to honor his memory and his truth. That is my only motive. Her sincerity was palpable. Several jurors nodded, seemingly moved by her candor. Thorne, momentarily thrown off balance, quickly moved to technicalities. Ms. Escovedo, did you personally witness Mr. Combs recording blackmail tapes? Did you ever see contracts linking Warner executives to coercive NDA? Did you ever hold these alleged tapes in your hands? His voice was laced with challenge, seeking to expose her as a purveyor of hearsay. No, Sheila E admitted, her voice steady. I did not personally witness those specific acts. My job, Mr. Thorne, was not to provide documents. My job was to listen to my friend, to share Prince's warnings. He told me these things. He showed me the depth of his fear. If you want paperwork, she concluded, her gaze firm, ask the label archives. Prince told me exactly where to look. The prosecution seized on that. Sharma stood. Your Honor, the prosecution intends to subpoena additional corporate records from Warner Brothers and other relevant entities, based on the witness's testimony regarding Prince's last investigations. Noted, Ms. Sharma, Judge Subramanian said, a flicker of interest in her eye. Tension escalated when Thorne challenged Sheila's recollection of Prince's final voicemail. Ms. Escovedo, you claim Prince spoke cryptically about tapes and being watched. We have a voicemail recovered from his phone, a 27-second clip, allegedly from that final call. We request to play it for the court. Permission granted, the judge stated. The courtroom speakers crackled. A faint, distorted voice, unmistakably Prince's, filled the air. We aren't safe. Watch the tapes. They're outside. The message was garbled, punctuated by static, barely audible. It ended abruptly. Thorne, with a dismissive wave of his hand, suggested, Escovedo, isn't it equally plausible that this fragmented message, perhaps distorted by poor reception, references Prince's well-documented struggles with prescription medication, a reference to tapes from his addiction perhaps rather than some grand industry conspiracy? Sheila's reply was chilling, delivered with quiet intensity. You can spin his words, Mr. Thorne. You can spin the static, but you can't spin the pattern. Artists broken, footage hidden, silence sold. He saw it. He warned me. And now the world is seeing it too. Her words resonated, cutting through the lawyer's attempts to obfuscate. The cross-examination lasted nearly 2 grueling hours. By the end, Sheila remained poised, her resolve unbroken, but the courtroom atmosphere had thickened, heavy with the weight of doubt and suspicion that Thorne had tried so hard to inject. Jurors scribbled feverishly, their faces a mixture of confusion and deep contemplation. One juror, a middle-aged woman, discreetly requested a tissue during a sidebar, evidence that even under a barrage of doubt, Sheila's raw, emotional account had pierced their emotional armor. Diddy's legal team sat stone-faced, their expressions unreadable. Their strategy had bruised Sheila's image, perhaps, but not shattered it, and in their aggressive attempt to discredit her, they had inadvertently spotlighted one unspoken fear that now hung in the air. If the documents Sheila hinted at truly existed, if Prince's evidence, dates, contracts were real, they could blow the case and perhaps the entire industry wide open. The evidence bomb, Prince's legacy unleashed. When court reconvened after lunch, the air was charged, crackling with an almost palpable tension. Anya Sharma wasted no time. It was the prosecution's turn to counterattack, and they did so with a carefully choreographed evidence dump, a cascade of documents and recordings they claimed Prince had intended to share before his death. Your Honor, Sharma began, her voice firm. The prosecution calls our next witness, Lionel Thorne, Prince's personal attorney. Lionel Thorne, a venerable, silver-haired man with a somber demeanor, took the stand. He identified a sealed envelope, its edges yellowed with age, bearing Prince's distinctive purple wax seal. This was entrusted to me by Prince Rogers Nelson, in early 2016, he stated, his voice raspy. He instructed me to open it only if he became unable to speak for himself, and only if a federal investigation of certain industry practices began. Judge Subramanian ordered the envelope opened in camera, then summarized its contents for the jury. Inside were photocopies of 3 non-disclosure agreements. NDA 1, signed by a female vocalist. Date, it contained language describing a coerced private performance at a party in the Hamptons, explicitly linked to Combs Entertainment affiliates. The terms of the NDA were strikingly similar to details Cassie Ventura had testified about. NDA 2, signed by a male session guitarist. Dated. This agreement referenced compromising footage recorded during an industry event in Miami. Again, the language echoed previous testimonies of alleged blackmail. NDA 3, unsigned but drafted for an up-and-coming rapper, and it meticulously outlined hush money terms and career benefits if he declined special appearances that would put him in a compromising position. The terms were chillingly specific, detailing payments contingent on silence. Lionel Thorne testified that Prince had obtained these from a trusted whistleblower at a major record label, someone Prince had been cultivating as part of his private investigation. The cover memo from the whistleblower, summarized by the judge, stated that these were just the tip of the iceberg of similar agreements designed to control artists. Next, prosecutors played an audio file recovered from a meticulously catalogued Paisley Park backup drive. The clip was brief, less than a minute, featuring Prince's distinctive voice, clear and resonant, rehearsing an interview that had never aired. In the clip, Prince said, his voice laced with a bitter irony, "They'll call it networking, but it's harvesting. Young artists go in thinking it's a part, they leave owing a debt measured in silence, a debt they can never truly pay off, because the currency isn't money, it's leverage, it's control." Jurors leaned forward, straining to hear every word. They recognized the same cadence, the same prophetic tone Sheila E had described. It was Prince, speaking from beyond the grave, articulating the very fears Sheila had conveyed. Then a financial analyst, Dr. Evelyn Reed, took the stand. She presented a complex web of money trails Prince's team had meticulously mapped. Shell companies, offshore account, routing appearance fees from seemingly legitimate events to 2 boutique security firms staffed primarily by ex-military contractors. Reed linked those firms to private events matching the precise dates of Cassie's alleged freak-offs and several gatherings listed in the newly introduced NDA. Her testimony highlighted invoices labeled innocuously as venue lighting or VIP liaison, identical language Cassie had testified Diddy used when allegedly hiding escort expenses and other illicit payments. The pattern was undeniable. Finally, in a move that sent a ripple of alarm through Diddy's defense team, prosecutors introduced hotel keycard metadata subpoenaed from a luxury hotel chain's archival servers. The logs showed that Prince's personal passcode for his hotel suite was reissued remotely at 3:00 a.m., on the night before his emergency plane landing in Moline, Illinois. The very hour Sheila E had claimed Prince called her, whispering, "They're outside my door." Prosecutors argued that the remote reissue indicated unauthorized tampering, supporting Sheila's assertion that Prince feared being followed, being watched, even in his moments of deepest vulnerability.
The cumulative effect was electrifying. Individually, each exhibit was circumstantial, a piece of a larger, unsettling puzzle, but together they formed a formidable lattice of evidence. NDAs mirroring Cassie's horrifying narrative, payments coded to disguise illicit vice costs, Prince's own recorded words anticipating blackmail and control, and finally, the digital breadcrumbs implying surveillance and a chilling breach of his privacy. Even conservative legal commentators, whispering in the overflow room, admitted the prosecution had done something rare, almost unprecedented. They had turned a dead icon's paranoia into tangible courtroom weight. "We might be witnessing the first posthumous whistleblower," one analyst quipped on a live stream. As prosecutors rested for the day, they left the jury with a powerful final image, a projection of Prince's own handwritten reminder to Sheila E, scrawled in his distinctive, elegant script. "Your silence won't protect you." It hovered on the massive screen until Judge Subramanian dismissed proceedings for the day. The subtext was unmistakable. If the jury believed Prince foresaw everything Cassie endured, if they believed his warnings were a prophecy unfolding in their very courtroom, then convicting Diddy would feel less like a verdict, and more like fulfilling a tragically delayed prophecy. Aftershocks. The industry reel's word of Sheila E's testimony and the subsequent evidence bomb rippled through the entertainment world like a seismic shockwave. Even before dusk had fully settled over Manhattan, Social media feeds erupted, a digital firestorm of outrage and disbelief. Veteran producers, once dismissive of industry rumors, now posted cryptic "told you so" emoji. Legacy journalists, who had for years dismissed Prince's more eccentric warnings as the ramblings of a reclusive genius, were forced to publicly admit they might have been wrong, that they had overlooked a dark current beneath the industry's glittering surface. A global hashtag, Untrust Paisley prophecy, trended by evening, a testament to the power of Prince's enduring influence and the chilling resonance of Sheila E's words. Music law firms, particularly those specializing in artist contracts, fielded frantic calls from labels asking what unpublished NDAs, what forgotten special agreements, might suddenly be subpoenaed next. Panic began to set in. Inside Bad Boy's sleek Manhattan offices, whispers turned into panicked leaks. Insiders reported that two senior executives, long considered Combs's inner circle, took indefinite leave within an hour of the hotel keycard metadata reveal. An internal memo, leaked from Warner Music Group headquarters, circulated widely instructing staff to preserve all historical documents pertinent to artist arrangement agreements, from sparking rampant rumors that the label expected federal knock-and talks, informal interviews that often precede grand jury subpoenas. Even streaming platforms felt tremor. A major service, known for its extensive archive of live performances and backstage footage, quietly convened a task force. Their mandate: to audit archival video footage it hosted from private performances, specifically looking for any material that might align with the newly revealed allegations of filmed coercion. The shadow of Prince's "they film everything" hung heavy over the entire industry. Back in court, the implications were immediate. Judge Subramanian, recognizing the profound shift in the trial's scope, scheduled an emergency in-chambers conference with both legal teams to discuss expanded evidentiary scope, signaling that more sealed material, perhaps even from Prince's deeper investigations, could surface. Reporters speculated that Prince's estate, long deadlocked over its valuation and the control of his vast unreleased archive, might now hold unprecedented leverage over labels desperate to avoid further disclosure. Legal pundits predicted a cascade of civil suits from artists who claimed they had signed hush contracts under duress, emboldened by the very public unfolding of Prince's alleged warnings. Most telling of all was Sean Combs's demeanor at day's end. For the first time since the trial began, observers noted he refused to make eye contact with the gallery, his usual bravado replaced by a haunting stillness. His gaze was fixed, unseeing, on the intricate wood grain of the defense table. When his attorneys whispered to him, he didn't respond, his face a mask of silent calculation. Outside, his mother, Janice, and his twin daughters exited behind tinted umbrellas, no longer pausing for cameras, their faces grim. The usual media scrum was less a circus, more a vigil. Sheila E herself left through a side door, escorted by 2 U.S. Marshals, a precaution ordered after prosecutors disclosed anonymous threats on social media, threats that only underscored the perceived truth of her testimony. She later released a brief, poignant statement to a waiting reporter, her voice raspy but resolute. "I did what he asked. I protected the truth." Her phone, insiders said, hadn't stopped buzzing since she stepped off the stand. Musicians thanking her, executives warning her, and legions of fans pleading for more. And somewhere in the swirl of breaking news, frantic calls and public outcry, the meaning of Prince's final public message, delivered just days before his death, just when you thought you were safe, landed with a new terrifying resonance. The trial of Sean Combs had already been billed as a reckoning for him personally, a pivotal moment of accountability. After Sheila E's testimony, and the subsequent unveiling of Prince's prophetic insights, it looked more like a reckoning for an entire era of music industry power, a long overdue exposure of its darkest corner. As court recessed, a veteran court sketch artist, her hands smudged with charcoal, summed it up best to a CNN mic. Her voice was low, laced with awe. "I've seen fraud cases, rackets, blood money, but I've never seen a ghost walk into a federal courtroom and testify. Today Prince did." Whatever the jury ultimately decides about Diddy's guilt, the story can no longer be contained. The silence Prince said labels valued most, the commodity they traded in and protected fiercely, had just shattered, and the echoes of Paisley Park, carrying the final warnings of a fallen icon, had finally broken free. The music industry would never be the same.